Essentially what we're going to be covering today is the software of the X series. We're going to put it in demo mode, which you can see at the top. It's highlighted in red, and that'll actually give you an idea that we're in demo mode. But essentially what that demo mode is, anybody can download the software from our website. You just go to buckeyecam.com and then go to the downloads, and you'll see the Windows and/or Mac version. But up in the header of the software, after you download it and you begin to run it, it'll ask you initially if you want to run it in demo mode. If you choose no, then it won't ask you again the next time you start it up. But if at any point you want to flip it to demo mode, you just simply click this question mark, and it'll ask you if you want to switch to demo mode, and you select yes, and it'll restart the software for you. But essentially, the demo mode gives you the ability to simulate the entire software. It allows you to run different bases, different devices. You can add cameras, feeders, echoes, hog traps, activators, basically anything we have. For the most part, the software demonstration mode is pretty all-inclusive. You can actually see just about every feature that's available, and trust me, there's a ton of features on this. So we're actually going to start running these demonstrations just probably once a week to cover more basis on it, so that we can actually get almost like an archive of software mode. So basically, we're going to go ahead and get started on it. Essentially, when you begin your demo mode, you're going to be given this option to choose your base type. And I'm not going to go into a great detail on everything that's available. I'm just going to cover the basics. Basically, there's 3 base types, and then there's a different way to run one of the base types. But by far, pretty much everybody's either running a PC base or cell base. PC base is if you're going to have a computer within, say, 1 to 2 miles of where your cameras are located. You can go directly to that computer by using a PC base. If you're in a very remote area, or you just want to use a cellular base so you don't have to have a computer within range, you can deploy the cell base. The net base works similar to the cell base, except it's over an Ethernet connection. So essentially, for the demo, we'll just start with the PC base. So I've got my demo mode going. I'm going to select PC base. It's going to simulate that, yeah, they found the PC base connected to the computer that's running the software. I'll go ahead and hit connect. Now it starts out and giving you some basic base and network information, system type, status, it's connected. Basically, this is information that, for the most part, you don't even pay attention to until you need to troubleshoot it at some point, if you ever do. My base is connected. I'll select done. Since I don't have any devices added, it'll go ahead and open up the header box to add devices. Essentially, you can see the 4 devices that you can add. If I were to be doing this in actuality, I would want my cameras or whatever device I'm trying to add within range of the base, in this example, the PC base. And I'd want my camera, for example, turned on, antenna on, ready to go. It'll say not registered, waiting for base on the device. So to add a camera to the system, I will simply click and drag the device and drop it to be registered. So basically, this shows that camera 1, as it's indicated now, it'll actually add that in the system as numerically correct. It added that camera. I could add any of these devices as I go. The same thing, if I were doing this real time, I would actually be making sure the next camera's on, and I repeat that. So you can see it adds it as camera 2. I'll add an echo. Same thing, if I were doing this in real time, I would actually have my echo on, antenna on, ready to go, ready to be registered to this computer. Same thing with feeder controllers and activators. And an activator could be to operate a gate, hog trap. Feeder controllers could be the whole kit. We sell both the kit and just the controller. And basically it does exactly what it says. It controls your feeder. Just for a brief explanation, an echo is essentially a repeater. It can also work as an external trigger device. I won't get into all that, but you can pair it to a camera and have an echo trigger a camera or cameras. I'm going to add a couple more cameras here so we can do some cool things with the software. Okay, so I've got all my devices added. They're all registered, ready to go, and I'm done. So I'll click done. So essentially this is what the network looks like. In this demo mode, you're going to see the cameras simulating actually taking pictures, actually receiving pictures, so that we can see different features of the software. Right now, since we've got the devices added, I'll show how you would remove a device. And it's very similar. We would click Add Remove Device. The header opens back up. We'll select the device we want to delete from the system. And in order to do this in real time, you would actually have the device within range of the base, or if it's routed, it just basically has to communicate. As long as it can communicate, then you would simply click and drag and drop the device in this gray area to unregister. It's going to confirm, are you sure? You click yes, it removes the device. And if you notice, now we got camera 1, there is no camera 2, echo 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now if I were to add that camera back in, or any camera back in, it's going to fill it in the next available slot. So I'll drag it back down and it's going to register that camera back. It puts it in as camera 2. So that's basically how you register and unregister devices from the system. Once I'm done, I'll click done. And so you can see the network. Now across the top, there's several different features you can use. This actually indicates that the email feature is activated. And these are just different screen views. You can select wide view mode, thumbnails, which that actually will give you this header along the bottom. And what that does is, just as pictures come in, it'll just give you a thumbnail of the most recent picture shown. And you can toggle that on and off at any time. This just gives you a different network view. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to show you the latest picture will actually come in here versus you're seeing your network. There's your network. You can change the different views of the network. So you can actually see that it's, vertical instead of horizontal. And this would drop all the cameras in as devices. So it's just basically toggling the way you view the network. Okay, so we'll go basically over some of the more common settings. I'm going to go ahead and turn the thumbnail off so we got the full screen. So from any device that's on your network, you can do the rudimentary functions like test the signal, the battery strength. If you've paid attention, you can kind of see these red arrow or these red circles up here. That just indicates how many pictures you've received at this particular camera since you've actually clicked on it. As more pictures come in, this number would change. Here you can see there's a picture on the camera. It's being transmitted. This will go to 3, so it shows you that 3 pictures have been received. And that number will go until the next time you actually click on that camera. If you notice, while I clicked on it, the red circle went away with a number. And once I click off of it, if I receive another picture, it'll actually show up there. When I clicked on this picture, or this camera rather, you can see that there's a preview. That's the latest picture that it's received. I can click in this to actually open up the folder where all the pictures are stored. I can do all of my tasks that I want to do for this particular camera are right here under these commands. I can check the status, which basically that just pulls the camera and it'll actually say what your battery is, what your signal strength is, and if any other information, it'll be posted right here as well. I can manually trigger the camera, and essentially all that does is just tells the camera, hey, take a picture. You can see it took a picture, now it's transmitting the picture, then it'll actually show up at the top. Discard pictures. This feature just basically allows you to discard any pictures that are on the camera that haven't been transmitted. You're out setting up a camera, it takes a bunch of pictures of you. You don't want to necessarily have to transmit them all. You can just hit this and it'll actually discard the pictures that have not been sent. Disable the sensor. Basically, this feature just allows you to disable the sensor, which is the PIR, at the camera for a particular time. You know, you're going to be out messing around this camera for an hour. You can actually turn the sensor off for an hour. So that'll actually start a timer. Within that timer, once that timer's up, it'll automatically go back to whatever settings you had it originally. Enable the sensor, that's just to toggle between. So if you have it disabled and you come back to your software and it's still disabled, you can just enable it. Restart your camera. For any reason you want to make sure that it starts back, you can just click restart and it'll automatically send the restart command to the camera. Settings, we'll get into that in a minute, but below that you can actually see status information, and this will get updated periodically, so you can get a brief updated version of what actually is going on. It'll tell you your signal, your motion sensor status, how many pictures are on the camera, how many you've received, file transfer, that means if it's actually transmitting or not, and your firmware version. So we'll cover the firmware version here in a little bit. Essentially, we'll go to the settings. Now remember, this is for this particular device, camera one. We have all these devices have individual commands and individual settings. So you can set one camera up completely different than the next. Once we click on settings, let me see if I can make this a little wider so you can see it. The basic settings open up to the camera. You'll see at the top there's two text fields, and when I click on them, you'll actually be able to type in whatever information you want and to show it on the picture. Now if you notice right here, these are the two text fields. As I check or uncheck these boxes, those fields will go away. So it kind of just shows you where that text is going to reside if you actually type it in. You can type in any text you want, or not at all. You can also add the following stamps to the picture: time, date, moon phase, temperature. You can toggle between Fahrenheit or Celsius. And again, this is camera specific, so I can have camera one set up completely different than camera two and so forth. The image format, this basically it's you can change the settings on the image format. 1/3 meg all the way up to 5 meg plus video. The one thing we try and teach people with our system is you're transmitting pictures. The larger the megapixel you run, the longer it takes to transmit. And since we actually use a native 5 meg imager, you still have very good quality even at the 1/3 meg, because we don't use 1/3 resolution, we actually crop it down. So you'll actually get a very good quality at 1/3 all the way up through 5 meg, because we're not interpolating the image, we're actually using native resolution. But just keep in mind that the lower resolution pictures, they're still very good quality. They transmit a lot faster than, say, the 5 megapixel. And it's just like, anything you send wireless. So you can set whatever you want, whatever resolution you want. Once you select your resolution, you click done. And basically at any point when you've changed the settings and you want to send those settings to the camera, you simply hit update. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm going to cover all the settings. Delay between motion triggers. This is how fast you want the camera to take a picture between pictures. So every time it triggers, how long do you want it to wait before it's ready to take another picture? And you can go from 1 second all the way to 2 hours. Just depends on your particular setup. You may want it to take a picture as fast as 1 second apart on a PIR trigger. Or if you're over a feed site or a highly active area, you may want to have a 30-second delay. So with a 30-second delay, it's going to take a picture, and then it will wait 30 seconds until it's ready and armed to take another picture. So, these settings, again, are all the settings, so I don't have to keep repeating this, all the settings for each device are device specific, so you can set up each device separate. So we'll set it at 30 seconds and click done. The next is the motion trigger or the motion sensor, and this is a sensitivity. How far out you want it to trigger, If you want it to start ignoring smaller animals or smaller targets, you just simply reduce the sensitivity. So if you don't want it to take pictures of raccoons or squirrels or birds, you just change the sensitivity. And all that's doing is reducing the sensitivity of the PIR at the camera. Next, we have pictures per trigger. It's pretty straightforward. If you want it, every time the camera triggers, if you want it to take 4 pictures, you just set it to 4, all the way up to 10. So we used to call this burst mode. Basically, it just gives you an overview of how to make it take multiple pictures under a single triggered event. Blink LED when motion detected. This is also known as a walk test. Basically what this does is it gives you an idea after your camera's set up, and you can also do this at the camera. You can set it at the camera, but if you want to be able to do a walk test and actually see where the camera's triggering, there's a hidden red LED on the camera that will illuminate every time it's triggered if this is activated. You can turn it on and leave it on. We have a lot of people that will use these in security applications, and believe it or not, they have it in an application where they actually want it to be seen that it's been triggered, so they leave this LED on. Most of the time, though, people don't want it to be seen, so they'll turn it off. But it is a good way to actually see where the camera is detecting motion. Camera schedule. Basically, the camera schedule, it gives you the ability to set up to 4 profiles. And I'll just cover this simply because this can get really deep. I'll set it up. Profile 1 is the one we've already got set up. That's in this tan area. Profile 2 gives it ability, and for the most part, I just tell people this is an easy way. If you're going to use it, I'll set the motion. I'm going a little ahead of yourself so I can drag it out. So basically, if I have an office that I have these cameras set over, like, I don't know, here in Athens, I can have them set up for business hours. So let me get all these broke through. Basically, from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, this camera is going to be off. So in the blue areas, the camera's off. In the tan areas, the camera's on. And I can have all different kinds of settings for all different times, and I just drag them in with the profile color. So I could have profile 3, and it could actually say, you know, from this time, I'm actually going to run a video. So I have to, and keep in mind, this is the same camera. So in the tan area, it's going to run profile 1 settings. So all the tan area, it uses all these settings. In the blue area, it uses all these settings, which is essentially I have it turned off. And then in the red, or fuchsia, I guess, I have it to run video mode. So it's just a way to actually have different settings under the exact same camera. And you can, you know, there's thousands of different ways to set up these profiles, so I'm not going to cover them all. But that just gives you a basic overview of how the settings work on the schedule. Use IR flash at night. We have a lot of customers, military and or border security, that actually don't want the flash to be activated, so they can actually turn the flash off. And that's simply just by a click of the mouse. The last pretty much feature setting for this particular camera is automatically delete files. And the reason why we have this in there is because our systems, once you start running wireless, it's a whole different ball game, and it's not unheard of to get 150, 175,000 pictures per year per camera. And if you can imagine running 6, 7 cameras on one particular computer over time, that actually can cause a lot of images to be stored on your computer. So you can actually set up to delete these older files, and you can delete files older than 30 days, older than 5 days. It'll actually, now that we have it up to a year. So you could select that, hey, if these files are older than a year, it automatically deletes them. It's just basically a way to keep your computer clean of old files. And we tell people that, you know, if you're saving files and you want to use this feature, store your files that you want to save separately. You can also add the last one is time lapse. Time lapse just tells the camera to take a picture at a certain time every day. So you can set these settings up. Basically, start at a particular time, particular day, limit the number of pictures, time between the time lapse pictures. But essentially, you can tell the camera to take a picture every hour on the hour, indefinitely, or 8 hours a day, or multiple different ways of setting it up. So basically, once I've got all my settings done, I hit update, and that basically sends all the settings back to the camera, and then you'll get a confirmation. And there again, you can do it throughout all the devices. And we won't do another camera too, because as you can see, it's got the exact same settings. The Echo actually has different settings because it's a different device. Similar check status, you can check the battery and the signal. And this, since the Echo can run off double A's or the 12-volt sealed lead acid, you can go either way on that. Feeder controllers, it's a little different, but essentially they're very similar. Within the Echo, you can also, similar to the camera, you can disable sensor, enable sensors. The settings within the Echo, again, you have text fields. The Echoes don't take pictures. What they actually do, they can be used as repeaters. So it's a network link. So if you're trying to get over a big hill 3 miles out, you can deploy an Echo and use it as a repeater to get over the hill and repeat other devices off of it. You can pair cameras with it. So every time an Echo gets triggered, it can trigger cameras within the area that you've had paired to it. So basically, if I wanted to say every time Echo gets triggered, Echo 3 gets triggered, it's going to tell camera 1 to take a picture, or camera 2, basically any camera on the network. A lot of times you'll use these if you want to trigger something within the camera's field of view, but maybe outside of the camera's triggering ability. So maybe it's 70 yards across the field, you set an Echo and it'll trigger a camera, and the target will still be in the field of view of the camera, but outside the detection range of the camera. So you can use an Echo for that. Mainly the Echoes are used for repeating, but they also do have this feature. You can, these settings are very similar to the camera. You can change the motion sensor sensitivity from basically off all the way up to high. You can reduce sensitivity to ignore smaller targets. You can delay motion or delay between motion triggers. Basically, it's similar as a camera, 1 second all the way up to 2 hours, which just does exactly what it says. It delays the motion between triggers. You can do the blink LED when motion is detected. Essentially, that's just a walk test. We also have the external trigger input, which the external trigger input is used in a lot of our security applications where they may have additional sensors, seismic, magnetometers, those sort of things. They all can be essentially wired into our Echoes to allow the Echo to work with their sensor and still be on our BuckEye Cam network. Sensor schedule, same as the camera. You can actually turn it on and off for a different profile. So a lot of these settings are very similar between products. That's just basically asking me if I'm sure that I want to do this, because I've made changes and I didn't hit update, so it asked me if I was sure. I'll just update it. So basically we've covered cameras and Echoes. Feeders are a little different, just simply because what the feeder does, I'm sure a lot of you guys actually run feeders, so the feeder it's just a wireless control for your feeder, and essentially what it does is it allows you to completely control your feeder from the software. So you can have multiple devices under one software, and you can have up to 254 devices. So but essentially what the feeder controller does is it allows you to actually see the settings, not only see the settings you can enable everything. You can pair cameras with them. It'll detect when it's empty or clogged. It'll detect the jammed motor. You can label the feeder. So if this is, your favorite feed site, whatever, you can put those in. You can turn it on and off. Some feeders are 6-volt, so you can actually switch the voltage. And all that does is it allows, our controller can run off 6-volt or 12-volt, but essentially what that does is if you're running a 6-volt and you've got it set on the 12-volt setting, it's not going to give you an accurate battery reading. So you got to make sure that you got the right battery type selected. Let's go back here. Settings on it. Oops, no, feeder sensor. This is actually when you first set up your feeder, you're going to want to fill it up and then learn. Basically, it'll spin once, so it gets a reading on when full is, and then it can give you really accurate calibration to actually be able to tell you when that feeder's empty. You can use default. That just gives you like a baseline to start. So if you happen to swap it out and you don't have it full, you can just use default. And that'll get you pretty close. Feed schedule. You can have up to, I believe, 24 feed schedules. And essentially that's exactly, it's no different than any other feeder other than it's all wireless and you actually get the feedback, which is important. That's, you can, schedule your feeds. More importantly, it'll actually give you the feedback, and we're finding out, well, since we've had this out, we've actually found out that we've got a lot more feeders fail a lot more often than what you realize because you're never there. But they do tend to clog a lot more, and these feeder controllers will actually give you those reports back that says, hey, you're not throwing feed. It'll also give you a report weekly, so you can actually see what's going on weekly. But essentially, you can just do standard feed schedules. You can set the time that you want it to go off, the duration, how long you want it to spin, and then the speed. And the speed is just obviously what it is, the speed of the motor. It's 100% all the way down to, I think, 30. Yeah. You add that, you can add another one. So, most people typically will feed 2-3 times a day. So in this scenario, I've got it going at 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. I hit update. Now this feeder is going to feed at 8 a.m., 3 p.m. And it will also, these feed events will actually, that's where you will see, it fed at this time, everything was okay. And you'll see what will happen is you'll actually have a chain of events for, a week long, and you'll see it'll give you a little triangle, yellow triangle with an exclamation point on the times when maybe it didn't actually feed. It spun, but the feeder controller read that nothing actually came out, and it'll tell you, hey, it may be clogged or empty, or it may be jammed. So you'll get those reports back, and then you can actually go in and manually spin it and actually see if, okay, now it's unjammed, and it'll actually tell you, okay, it's now, the status is fine. So, and that's the interesting thing we've discovered when running these feeder controllers is a lot of feeders are not very reliable. This is really handy if you've got a remote property and you spend, you're out there once a month and you want to actually be able to see what's going on, and you show up knowing that the feeder's actually working versus showing up and finding out it's not working on your first day of hunt. So we basically, the feeder control panel. It does give you the same sort of status information, next feed cycle, feeder time, basically the firmware version, everything is covered on that. The next series we're going to cover is the Activator, and the Activator could be a gate where it's actually controlling a gate. It can also control our hog traps or any drop guillotine style trap. Essentially, it's pretty simplistic. You can pair it with a camera. So, for example, if you have camera 2 watching a gate, you can pair camera 2 with that gate. And that does several things. That actually gives you the ability to do what we call hot links. It allows you to receive an email and actually say, hey, drop the gate or drop the trap, more particular when you're using hog traps. Beep before activation. So when it actually gets activated, whether you're doing it manually or remotely, the activator itself will beep. You can turn that on and off. It's handy, especially if you're going to be testing a hog trap, to have it beep so nobody gets injured. Same thing with the text fields. You can actually type in what you want in either one of these fields and it'll show up on the text. And it'll also show up underneath here, because you can see this says Activator 5 here. That's where it actually gets changed when you change the text. You can manually activate it, and literally, since I have camera 2 paired with it, anytime I activate it, camera 2 will take a video of the activation. So they work, just like it says, paired. They work together. So when you're using it in a hog trap scenario, the camera you have paired will always run a video of the activation. So you'll actually get that positive feedback. You actually get a video of the actual device running. So that's handy. You can check status, that's the same thing. All the devices you can check status from. That's the whole point of this. So that's pretty much how you do, or how you maintain or be able to manage the system. Obviously, you can run up to 254 devices, so you're not limited. One of the other features I really wanted to cover kind of quickly here, because we're running out of time, is the ability to reroute devices. This is important because if you have a device for whatever reason that you didn't get a good enough signal go directly to the base, so maybe you had to reroute it in the field, and which I'll change the routing real quick so that I can simulate what goes on. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm polling this camera, and it tells me any of the devices in the field that it can talk to. So just for this simulation, I'm going to reroute devices so you can see actually what happens. So when I went to set all these cameras up and all these devices up, camera 1, 2, feeder 4, activator 5, and camera 7 were able to talk to the base. Camera 6, I couldn't get it to talk to the base, but I could get it to talk to camera 2, so it's just going to route through camera 2 back to the base. And the same thing with the Echo 3. So say, for example, camera 2 goes to low battery, so now this means that this whole network is down, so maybe I need to, well, obviously I'd need to change battery, but in the meantime, I could actually reroute these devices or see if these devices could talk to another device in the field to help reroute my network without actually going out there. So I can actually go back to this is the menu. These 4 lines are always the menu. You can click change routing. I'm going to see, okay, maybe they'll go through camera 1. So camera 1 is going to go out and poll to see what all devices it can talk to in the field. I'm going to search. So it can talk to these 2, so I'm going to switch them over and reroute them. And keep in mind, I'm doing this either remotely or right there at the computer. So now I've rerouted those devices. And in this simulation, if camera 2 battery was dead, I could actually have those peel to go to camera 1, and then now they're still going to transmit. So I don't have to worry about, having these cameras and this Echo be down for however long before I get out and change the battery on camera 2. I can reroute multiple times. A lot of our military and police, sheriffs, border patrol, they will actually have quite a routing structure going on. So you're really only limited by your last camera or last device in line, essentially. So, camera 6 is repeating through Echo 3, which is repeating through camera 1, which is going to the base. And you really want to try and keep your devices limited to write, as few hops, as we call it, as possible, and that helps battery life and transmission speed and all that. But if you're in an area where it's just tough to get out of, that's why we have all our stuff to be able to repeat, so you can repeat. Essentially, it'll add like 10 to 20% transmission time to go through one device to another. It tends to be a little faster, but that's a good rule of thumb. But you can continue to route out as far as you need to get your system up and running. And you can remember that, maybe from the base to camera 1 is 2 miles, maybe from camera 1 to Echo 3 is 2 miles, and maybe from Echo 3 to camera 6 is 2 miles. So you can cover quite a distance with just 3 devices. And like I said, you can do this in the field as well, which we may cover later with a different broadcast. But essentially, I just wanted to cover the demo mode of our software in this little live broadcast, and some of the basic features, how the system works, what you can do from the computer, and just kind of cover some of the basic steps. Obviously, we've got a lot more stuff to cover that we will cover in future episodes, but I didn't want to overwhelm with this first one. I mean, essentially, you have a base, your cameras talk to the base. Which base you use is dependent on the particular location of the property that you're running these devices on. What devices you want to run, that's completely up to you. We get the question a lot that, can I add a device later? Yeah, you can add, we got guys that'll buy, six devices up front and then add 3 devices every year. And they'll have multiple properties. So it's really just kind of dependent on your particular situation, but you can absolutely build these as you go. If you have any questions, I can see the comments later, and we'll check these back later to see if there's any legacy questions on it. But like I said, you're more than welcome to go to our website and download the software. And then once you open up the software, you don't have to install any drivers or anything. Just download the software, follow the typical software on screen prompts. After it's downloaded, go ahead and double click on the icon, the X series icon, and it'll ask you if you want to run it in demo mode. Select yes, and basically from there you can just play around with the system. It's going to simulate what's going on. You'll see pictures come in. They'll be shown down here. You'll see, like these 2 pictures, obviously they're repeats. We just have a small sampling of pictures to roll through, but essentially it gives you an idea of what goes on, how it goes on, gives you some feeling of how the software actually works. So basically right now that's all I'm going to cover on this broadcast. Like I said, if you have any questions after watching this, feel free to post them. We'll be notified if you post questions. Hopefully we'll do more of these to where you guys can get more knowledge on the software. So that's that. Thanks a lot.